Martin and I'm an aero modeller and an engineer. Join me on a fascinating journey where I show you some of the techniques used in scale aero modelling.
Hello again modelers, and welcome back to the channel. I'm not sure how you've managed to contain yourself all week waiting for this exciting episode on rib tapes. Rib tapes are applied to all fabric covered aircraft, and they are used to reinforce the fabric where the fabric touches structure underneath. And in the case of wing ribs and wing tapes, the material is used to strengthen the fabric where stitching has occurred, and stitching is where cord is passed from the upper to the lower surface of the wing, actually tying the fabric to the wing rib, so that in areas of positive or minus air pressure, the wing fabric doesn't balloon and is kept to the right shape. So I hope you enjoy this video, and let's get started.
So we need to do a bit of wing rib taping or rib tapes on the wings. Now these were covered some time ago, covered in Seconite. I think I've shown on one video or other how I've covered these. So this is a full scale, full size aircraft covering, mainly for gliders and microlights. So it's Seconite, and it was applied using balsa lock around the edge of the airframe, and then the Seconite is laid over, and then a hot iron is used to iron it down around the edges. Once it's down around the edges, then 4 or 5 coats of non-shrinking or low tautening dope being put on top of it. After the first coat of dope, I then shrunk it a little bit with the iron, and then continued with the coats of dope. And as you can see, it's lovely and tight. So the rib tapes, how do these work? On the full-size aircraft, the ribs are usually narrower than this. This is using what's called capping strips, and these are too wide for what would actually be on a full size. If you imagine it was more like a 1/16 of an inch wide, that's how wide a rib is. So what you have to do is you have to stitch the fabric so that it's held to the airframe, and it goes through the wing, over the top, down the other side, and then you come back up the other side, and then you go under the wing's fabric to the next hole. You come up, down, around, through, up through the next hole, and each time you come up and go under, you tie a knot. This is a 50% scale rudder that I'm doing, and I'm not sure if you can see, but the stitches just go straight across, and actually it goes underneath the covering to the next knot, then comes up, goes over, down and around, comes back up, is knotted, and then goes under to the next knot. And when you pull it tight there, it pulls the knot inside the fabric. Okay. Now on a full size as well, you can't run the rib stitching, which is usually a waxed cotton or a waxed nylon thread. You can't run that straight against the rib and the fabric, because it would rip it. So what you do is you make little holes in the fabric exactly where you want these to go with the needle, and then you lay on top what I call the tape itself. And on the full size, it's like a strip. It's akin to the parcel packing wrapping, that you put around if you've got a pallet of goods and you want to put that strapping around it, and it pulls really tight. It looks a bit like that. It's obviously not that. It's made of a more natural material, but it's a stiff strip that you put on top of the rib, and then the stitches pull down on that. They don't pull down directly onto the rib. Okay, and then over the top of that, then you put the rib tapes. Okay, and then around the periphery of the whole airframe, you then put another tape, a periphery tape that wraps right around. Okay, so that's what we're going to try and do today. So when you look at the size of the pinking on rib tapes, it has a scale, and you have to you have to get it right for the size of the model. You can get these, which are pinking shears. Okay, now that's a scale set. I should have these are full size. So these are the sort of things that would be used on a full size aircraft on the tapes. So if we look at the spacing of the full size between the peaks, we've got 5 millimeters. It's a gnat's nadger over 5 millimeters, but to all intents and purposes it's 5 millimeters. So if you imagine the full size is 5 millimeters, you can then work out what size the pinks need to be for your model. These pinks are at 2 millimeters. So just under a 50% model. Fifth scale, we want they're 1 millimeter between peaks. And if it's 5 millimeters on full scale, and that's 1 millimeter, that to me is 1/5 scale. However, if you look at the label, it says 1/4 scale. So I'd argue that that's not right. So I'm going to use Mick Reeves quarter scale rib tapes for my 5th scale TB Auster. The first thing you have to do with the Mick Reeves tapes when you get them, this is an older set, and this is cut from Solartex. The newer stuff that Mick sells is cut from Orotex. You can see what's happened and how it's been done. It's actually a section of the covering simply lasered, and in the pack you get several strips wide, and you get some narrow, not very many narrow, about 1 narrow, and then you get some really wide, some more really wide ones. So you get 2 really wide and then 1 narrow, and then the rest are conventional rib tapes. So you might want to use these wide ones for periphery tapes right around the leading edge and stuff like that. But these are actually, at the scale we're using them, these are too big. So as it's a standoff scale model, I think I'm probably going to end up using the rib tape material as my periphery tape as well. And you get quite a bit in the Mick Reeves kit. He also does in the set circles, you know, the patches that you would put on over areas of stress underneath the fabric. Access panels, all sorts of things may have a circular patch over the top. Sometimes the circular patch can be cut off so that you can get in and do something, and then you put another circular patch over the top of it. Okay, so the first thing we've got to do is actually split these down into individual lengths, and because it's Solartex, it tears really easily along the grain. Now I'm going to take the backing off because I'm going to use all of this, I'm pretty sure of that. And by the way, the backing of Solartex makes a wonderful plan protector. Nothing sticks to it. Fabulous stuff. So I often save it for that, but these are only small sections, so it's not really any good. So you've just got to pop it in little areas that are still attached. And then the ends. And there you have a length. Now, what I'll do is I'll just cut the end. Now I know this is not scale, but a pinked edge, even at the wrong scale, to me, looks better than a straight line. Okay, so it's probably going to get hidden anyway, but even if it isn't, you know, it's just to hide it. Now the way an aircraft works is the ribs are pinked first, the ribs are stitched first, then the pinking tape is put over the top, or the pinked tape is put over the top, and then when all of that's done, the periphery tape is applied to keep the pinked rib tapes on the aircraft and stop them lifting at the leading edge. Right, so to simulate the tape that goes on here, I like to use, as you've probably seen on that larger, I like to use a lining tape, and in this case I'm using a PVC lining tape. I quite like this stuff, I use it for lots of things. So basically I'm going to go along the top of the rib, just like that. Now we have all the rib tapes applied, and there we go. So now what we need to do is simulate the stitching across the top. Now you'll remember on this one, on the large scale version that I'm doing, I did actually stitch it, and if you look inside, I'm not sure if you can see that. If you look inside the rib, you can actually see the stitching going backwards and forwards across the wing. Now we're not doing that on this because this is a sports scale model, so we won't go to those extremes. So the way I'm going to simulate it on this is a method that Richard Krapp showed me, and I've used it quite successfully since. So this is basically the process I take to make the rib stitching. So I take some just cheap general purpose double-sided tape, sort of stuff that you use to hold carpet down on the edges. Stick it onto the wood like so. I line it up on one edge, then flip it over, and then using a sharp scalpel just separate it. So that's scrap. So there's our tape. So we then take this layer off. If you can get your fingers into the edge of it. I think I've got it. So we're leaving a layer of stickiness, double-sided stickiness, onto the board. Then we take another piece of tape and stickiness, and we lay this sticky side up on top of that stickiness, like that. And that is sticky. Okay. Now you've got to be careful when you cut this bit, because obviously that side is sticky. You can't do it the same way. So it's very awkward. And it's trying to snag me already, you see. Let's see if a sharp scalpel is any more successful. Yeah, that seems to have worked. Except for the top here, where it doesn't want to separate. And there we go. If you're doing a 1/6 scale or smaller model, well, if it's smaller than 1/6 scale, you probably wouldn't be doing rib tapes. But if you're doing something around 1/6, then thread is enough. However, this model is 1/5, so what I'm actually using is this stuff. 50-gram 6-ply crochet thread, and I use it quite a lot for a few things around the models. It's good stuff. And basically what you do is you stick it onto there like that, and then you literally wrap it around the wood, and then you line it up parallel, you wrap it round, and you keep going down like this all the way, trying to keep the line perpendicular and the same size, and then you keep going till you reach the other end. Eventually, when you get it all wrapped around, it should look like this. The first thing you've got to do is cut the edges, because you don't want, you need to cut the ends off. So you get it quite close to the edge. Oops, too close to the edge maybe. And with any luck, that should have cut all the fibres off, and a little tiny strip of tape, of the carpet tape, so that you've now got a nice edge to work with. I like to use one of these Fiskars rotary blades for cutting this, because if you use a scalpel, it pulls and it drags, and it can drag the thread away from where you want it, whereas the rotary doesn't do that. So you put a steel rule down to find your line. You've got to press quite firmly, because you need to get through it. You don't really want to be going back and doing it again. Okay, and you'll find the thread holds the ruler off the stickiness, so it's not quite as bad as you think. Okay, so then when you cut each one into strips like this, this is going to take quite a lot, this model, because at 1/5 scale there's a fair old few sections. So for this first one, we'll just lift the stickiness away, and you see it's coming up with all the bits attached. So then all you have to do is lay it on top of the other tape, you know, the what I call the rib tape, and this is the stitching. Just dab it down gently, and it is fiddly. It's fiddly as hell, and you've got to make sure it doesn't kink. If it sticks to itself, you've had it. That's it. Tear the whole strip off and do it again. Okay, that goes down there. And again, just tap it on so it's on all the way. Take your blade and cut it before you get to the end, like that. So that's the rib tape, the rib stitching, and then all we need to do on top of that, if I can find it, is my strip of pinked tape. Now it's Solatex, so the shiny side has the glue on it, unless of course it's a shiny Gloss-Tex, then you might find that both sides are shiny on it. So I want to go to there, I want to go to there, and I want to go to there. Okay, so Now this is Solartex, so I need it around 100 to 120. I'm at 122, which is more than enough. And then you take it all the way to the end of the wing. And then remember, I like to use my pink shears for this. And then I just gently wrap it just around the back just a bit, not much. Right, now we can go along and actually apply the tape. Now what I tend to do is do one edge out from the centre and on the other side out from the centre, because remember you've got those tapes in the way, got those stitches in the way, so you will have a lump in the middle, and that's the whole idea. Is you want to be able to see this lump, but you don't want it to be so obvious that it becomes prominent, because less is more with scale area modelling. Less is more. And I will continue along that until it's all done, and then we'll reconvene. Once all the rib tapes are applied, then it's time for the perimeter tape. And this goes all the way around the outside, as I said before, and it overlaps the rib tapes such that air can't get underneath the rib tapes and lift them off. So that's its main function. And also, if there are any seams in the fabric on the full size along the edges, this tape covers those seams. It's fairly straightforward. Just make sure you get it central. There's nothing worse than a wonky perimeter tape, especially on the leading edge. So the way I do it is I tack one end and then I come all the way to the other end or to the middle, and then I get it on my centre line and I tack it again. And then I come back and sort of go from the centre line and wrap it round the leading edge. Obviously I do the opposite because it's facing the time, it's a lot easier. So it's very straightforward, and a leading edge is not very taxing because it's not a compound curve. However, the wingtip is another matter. So when we come to that bit, I'll show you how we tackle that. When it comes to the wingtips, this is where it can get quite funny, because obviously now we're into a compound curve. So I'm going to take the tape to the beginning of the curve as I would normally. So just bear with me while I attach the tape through this bit. I'm just going to give it a good wrap around the leading edge, top and bottom. I'm not going to seal it down at this point, there's no need, but it's attached well and truly. So the way you do the tip, now this is going to be quite interesting because the tip doesn't follow on from the leading edge. It actually, probably can see it, it curves upwards. So the tip's going to be entertaining. So it's stuck to this point here, which is the beginning of the curve. So what you do to make this actually work for you is you pull it really tight. Now do you see, as I pull it tight around the bend, it actually starts to go either side, and that gives you the leg up, the quick opportunity to get this right. Oops, later on. You do actually need to use quite a bit of force at this point, pulling it, stretching it. So you can see I'm trying to stretch it so that it'll go to the middle of the tip, but actually that's quite difficult because, as I said earlier, it goes upwards rather than just following the line of the leading edge. So attach it there, keep going. See, as you pull it, it tends to try and come down towards the edge. Then if you roll your iron, run it along and keep bringing it down as you go, covering hopefully can see it wrinkling. Hopefully we've not put so much material on here that you can't actually get away with this. If we have, then I'll go to a thinner strip. Keep going, ironing it down and rolling the iron slightly further and further. And eventually, with any luck, like that bit there, it's all gone down and the wrinkles have gone away. This is going to be the worst bit just here. Let's see if we can get rid of them. And there we go, they're mostly gone. And continue around the tip, this section here. And this continuous rolling action, rubbing backwards and forwards. And you can see all the minute wrinkles all being forced towards the surface. And then eventually, when you are actually flush, with a bit of luck, you'll have got rid of almost all of them. In fact, we've still got a few there, but when the primer goes on and that gets sanded, we'll probably get rid of those. This perimeter tape is actually a little bit too wide to do what we're doing here, but I've started, so I'll continue with it. Okay, so that's the process. I'll show you in a minute when it's all finished. Just to give you another view of what I'm doing, you can see there's a lot of material there you've got to lose. This is the area where it's going to be really problematic. Hopefully you can see that on the camera. So I start by going around like this, angling the iron further and further over. And this isn't going to be quite as good as I'd normally make. Good job, because this tape is just too wide to try and make it do this. I can make the narrow stuff really go right round stuff like this, but this is proving just a little bit too much. So there's very tiny little wrinkles in there. Now whether I rip this off and do it again, that's another matter. Let's see how it goes. Just be patient. Bring the iron round gradually until it's the same angle as the surface. And there you see. It's pretty good. And that really is quite a vicious curve. I should have used a rib tape around the outside. Then it would have got to the halfway point, which is where you see the wrinkles start. So, but I think you'll find when we do this bit here, because it's a slightly less vicious corner, you'll see that it goes a lot better. Of course, there's a lot of material, just fabric, that's bunched up here, so there may be a problem just there. See if we can get rid of it. I don't think we will. I think we've got to lift that from a bit further back. See, it's going. Well, I hope you can see it's going. Might also help if I crank the iron up a little bit more. It's still only on 120, which is a sticking setting. 120 to 150 is a shrinking setting, and it may well be that I need to do a little bit of shrinking of the material as I'm going. Quite often the Solartex actually changes colour as the iron goes over it. It goes a slightly darker shade, and it's not really doing that today, so I think maybe the iron is just a little bit lower than ideal. We also have to add a perimeter tape around the rear from the tip of the aileron right the way to the root, and I'm going to use normal rib tape thickness for that. So that's not perfect, and it actually looks a bit wrong being so thick, so I'm not sure about that at this time. Now I'm going to show you how to do the perimeter tape around the wingtip. Now I did just have a go at it using the wide perimeter tape, but this is for quarter scale and it is too wide, so although the pinking is a good width, it's not so good for this because it's just too much work to get it around the corner. So what I'm going to show you is how to do it with this. Now this probably should be a little bit wider, so something between the two would be perfect, but this is what we've got. So the way to do it is to again attach it along the center line of the tip, and what you do is you pull it towards, and you'll see that it naturally tries to curve around the surface. So just apply the iron like that, slide it backwards and forwards, and wrap it round as you go, further and further. And you'll see it's fairly easy to do it when it's such a narrow strip as this. It's much more interesting, as you saw, when the strip was wider, with more material to try and lose. So as I said, it should be slightly wider than that, but not as wide as this stuff I've used on the leading edge. But there we go. I shall continue with this, and I'll let you watch for a bit longer. You roll it round increasing the angle of the iron as you go. And what that does is actually shrink the material that is above the surface, not in contact with it. It shrinks it before the iron gets to it. Keep going. You can see the wrinkles are being chased towards the edge. And as you get close to the last section, they all vanish. And there you go. It's not difficult, just needs a little bit of practice. Flip it over, see what we've got on the bottom here. Just got this last little bit to do. And there we are.
Well, that's about all we have time for on this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Fascinating, isn't it? Well, I think it's fascinating, but maybe I should get out more. Okay, I'm not sure what we're going to be looking at next week. Probably wing struts. God, don't we lead an exciting life? Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please click subscribe. Join me next week on Friday, 8 PM, and we'll see what we can get up to then.